Howard, 45 minutes, 390 to the Burn Circle. Stevenson, 56 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan is 28 minutes, 95th to downtown. I-57, 32 minutes, I-80 to the merge. Bishopport, 40. Northbound Tri-State delays are from 115th and Ridgeland to 47th, and from the Reagan tollway to Lawrence. Northbound Veterans Memorial is having the Fountain Toll to Maple. Reagan tollway delays start before 59. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
A lakeshore flood advisory in effect today. Partly sunny, the high 33. It'll be clear and very cold tonight, low 17. Partly sunny tomorrow, the high again 33. And then partly sunny for Saturday, the high up to 44. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
23 at O'Hare. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Don't miss the ammo event this weekend at Shoot Point Blank. Pick up great deals on ammo, like 50 rounds of 9mm as low as $10.99 per box. The more ammo you buy, the more you save. Load up this weekend at Shoot Point Blank's ammo event. See store for details.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, Pagliacci, as he's known, was on the Senate floor on Tuesday, setting up the announcement Wednesday that public hearings would be commencing next week, Wednesday. Saying,
can't wait.
saying,
Must see TV.
Saying this about the process.
The investigation is not yet complete. Jumping to conclusions before all the facts come out is misguided. It's unbefitting of a senator's role as judge and juror of a potential impeachment case.
Like that guy that invented the pet rock? I had an idea like that once, a long time ago.
Really? What was it, Tom?
Well, all right. It was a jump to conclusions mat. You see, it would be this mat that you would put on the floor and would have different conclusions written on it that you could jump to.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, Tom.
I actually like Tom's idea from Office Space better than I like Chuck Schumer's don't jump to conclusions. He's obviously chastising Senators Perdue and Graham and Scott, who basically said what we know to be true, there is no case for removing the president from office. There's not going to be a single Republican to vote for this if articles of impeachment were to come over from the House. But the idea of Chuck Schumer lecturing Republicans on jumping to conclusions.
It is comical.
This is a man who's a leader of a party where anywhere, as we talked about earlier in the week with Phil Kerpen, anywhere from 25% to 40% of the House Democrat caucus have voted to impeach the president, moved resolutions to impeach and remove the president from office because of criticizing NFL players who kneel during the national anthem, because of criticizing the squad and telling them to go back to their countries of origin.
Because of not releasing his tax returns. Everything he does, they have a whole list.
AOC said he should be impeached because of tax cuts.
Oh, that's right.
Because of a citizenship question on the census, the effort to put one on. Because of emoluments, a word that she's still trying to wrap her mind around. I mean, it's remarkable the suspension of disbelief that's required to listen to Chuck Schumer or Adam Schiff and nod your head, which is why we need somebody skilled in the art of linguistics and how people receive communication. And that, of course, is Trump whisperer Scott Adams, Dilbert cartoon creator. He's got a new book, Loserthink, How Untrained Brains Are Ruining America. And I don't think he just means in Congress, but he certainly includes Congress. Scott Adams, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So the reaction to the rule of the mantra from Democrats at present on impeachment, rule of law, rule of law, rule of law, and the investigation is not getting complete. We're doing a methodical investigation, and we're trying to get to the facts, following wherever the facts go to defend the Constitution and uphold the rule of law.
Well, they've got a huge blind spot there because they're all deeply engaged in the details of this story, non-story, who talked to who, who the diplomats are, who's the whistleblower. But the average voter, if they were successful in getting an impeachment based on the Ukrainian phone call, the average voter would be left thinking, did you just impeach him for wording something wrong on a phone call? What was that crime again? So I've got a feeling that the public is not going to be able to grasp just why he would be impeached. But I don't think there's much risk. The Senate won't do it.
What about the quid pro quo, the sort of essentially trying to gaslight the public and say, look, if there was a quid pro quo, then, and if you know what that means, if there's a quid pro quo, that means he should be removed from office. And if we can establish there was a quid pro quo, then by the transitive property, we have to remove him.
So they've done a clever thing, the Democrats have, and I have to give them credit in a persuasion sense. They've managed to frame this thing as digging for dirt on an opponent. Now, I guess you could say that's technically true. But another way that they could have said it, or at least the Republicans could say it, is that he was asking the same questions that are of great interest to the American voters. Wouldn't Democrats and Republicans want to know if there was anything there that would make Biden a walking dead candidate? Would they want to nominate somebody who's got a little problem that's going to come up later? I would think they would want to know too. So I don't know that you can impeach a president for asking the same questions the public wanted to ask.
But that gets, muddied because the fact that the whistleblower used to work for Biden. And do you think that's why they're just going to such great lengths to try and hide his identity?
Yeah, I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but it doesn't seem as if every story that has anything to do with Washington, D.C., somebody's associated with Farrakhan there's nobody who's not associated with somebody who's been to jail or should go to jail. So I'm always a little wary of the association stuff. But how much would you like to see Ted Cruz interrogate the whistleblower on national TV?
Very much.
Man,
that would be spectacular.
Oh, my God. Just from an entertainment perspective, that would be amazing.
I'll even take John Radcliffe over on the House side. But the Republican arguments, give us your assessment of the Republicans' arguments. Or they're making a procedural argument in one sense. That's multi-pronged. Procedural argument, it's an unfair process, and it's an illegitimate process, and if the process is illegitimate, then the result is, by definition, illegitimate. It wasn't a quid pro quo, but then sort of arguing the alternative, if it was a quid pro quo, it doesn't matter anyway because it doesn't rise to the level of a high crime or misdemeanor.
Well, part of the problem is that they seem to have several different approaches, and they're cycling through them. The president generally settles on the simplest message because simple is effective. So just saying that the transcript shows it was perfect was okay, but I don't think it went far enough. I wouldn't give him an A+ on this one. I would say that a better message would have been something along the lines of he was asking the questions that the American people really would like to know and is a top priority. Is there any foreign interference that we need to worry about involving the guy who's polling to be the next president of the United States? It's the very problem that people have in their minds as one of the biggest problems in the country, and he was asking about it. I just don't see how that turns into a crime.
I want to you can use impeachment as an example to perhaps elucidate this, but your book, Loserthink, this is so important because you go right to the problem in politics, at least for conservatives, which is defending against emotionally salient arguments that are intellectually vacuous. They have great emotional appeal. They're intellectually devoid of substance, but they can often win the day. And so the tips that you have to deal with those sorts of arguments, those sorts of appeals.
Well, the first thing to do is recognize them, and I always recommend that people sample both sides of the political news. So if you're not watching what the left and the right are saying, you might be missing stuff. So that's step one. But you often see that a lot of the headlines and a lot of the accusations involve somebody imagining they can read the mind of a stranger. Well, what you did was okay, what you did was legal, but we're pretty sure that internally the way you were thinking about it was just selfish. and that you had some other motive, even though what you did was fine. And if we start judging people by what strangers imagine we're thinking, we're doomed. We need to back that up and say, how about judging people by their actions, because that's the part you can verify. And then, of course, the funniest and worst thing you see is the analogies as replacements for any kind of reason. And that takes the form of, I like to use this example, if your cat has a little markings under its nose that look like a Hitler mustache, that does not predict that your cat will invade Poland. Right. Sometimes things just remind you of other things, but that's all it is. It doesn't predict anything. You see that all the time.
I've seen those cats before.
Yeah. Then the main thing that they get wrong is what I call the comparison problem, which is saying that something is good or bad without looking at either all the costs or at least what is the next best thing you could be doing. So those are the big things you see, and then dozens more that I talk about in the book.
What about the ad hominem mantra? Hate, 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 all the isms, all the phobias. People get backed down by that. I mean, for goodness sakes, you had a nominee for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals break down into tears last week, essentially, in the face of such criticism. That has real political power for people, the name calling.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably more effective than it should be. But at least everybody knows what it is when they see it. They know it's an illegitimate attack. And I typically declare victory on Twitter when somebody goes after me personally. If I present a point and somebody argues it, and then I use my superior thinking to to knock them down. Usually the next thing I hear is, okay, boomer, or, who listens to a cartoonist, or something to diminish me.
Right.
Can we move over to Kentucky real quick? And Matt Bevin, the governor there, still has not conceded. Now he's claiming, voter fraud because he's down 5,000 votes. But do you think that his loss is just local politics, or do you think President Trump should be concerned?
These are always multivariable things. So it's one of the things I talk about in Loserthink is that as soon as you latch on one variable and say, well, it's because the president, or, well, it's local politics, the answer is going to be it's all those things. And it's hard to tease out the one thing that made the difference in a complicated situation. But I think we'll probably be over-interpreting Trump's involvement in just about everything as a general rule.
One of the challenges is to deal with people who take policy positions as articles of faith. Green New Deal, Greta Thunberg, the how dare you. There was a good piece in the Wall Street Journal by Andy Kessler recalling the great author Michael Crichton and Crichton's conundrum, as he termed it, the idea that I'm against something or I'm for something, so whatever theory supports my conclusion must be right, and then the debate is over, and I don't need to contemplate any countervailing evidence. We see this all the time in the climate change discussion. Any insights into how to deal with those who take climatology or some other public policy matter as an article of faith?
Well, when it comes to climate, almost everybody who's talking about it doesn't know what they're talking about, because we're not scientists and we're not climate scientists, and even the climate scientists probably focus on the part of their field that they're the expert on. So the good news is, in the case of climate, that the solution is the same whether you believe it's a problem or not a problem, because we're going to need nuclear energy no matter what climate is doing, and we're going to need a lot of it just to keep the planet clean enough and have enough power for people. So there's a lot happening in the nuclear power field with the so-called Generation 4 nuclear plants that are such as Bill Gates' company, one of the ones he invests in, TerraPower. They've got some designs that will eat nuclear waste for their fuel. So it actually decreases nuclear waste, and it can't melt down by design. So if things go wrong, it just stops working. It doesn't melt down. So that's the sort of stuff that we should be prototyping. They're already designed. They're ready to go. They just need space and approval. And we need to iterate that a few times and then I think everybody's going to be happy because I don't know anybody who's not in favor of trying every energy solution that we can.
All right, one more. I'm going to need some advice and counsel on this one.
Okay.
Class envy politics. You know, the eat the wealth arguments that eat the rich, confiscate the wealth arguments that are made mainly by the left.
Well, you know, you're never going to get away from the fact that people are going to try to take money from other people. That's just basic. So these things tend to be argued as fairness. But fairness, I always say, was invented, the concept of fairness, so that children and idiots would have something to say. Because the real world doesn't operate on fairness, because no two people could agree what it looks like. So it's not a standard you can achieve. The real world works on power. If somebody had the power to redistribute money, they might do it. But if they don't have the power, they won't. Calling it fair or unfair is really just a distraction.
He is Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert cartoon, the author of the new book, Loserthink, How Untrained Brains Are Ruining America. Pick that up. Scott Adams, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Message and data rates may apply. Individual results vary. Exclusions apply.
Contacts and glasses are such a hassle. I'd love to finally get LASIK, but
I'm going to stop you right there. If you want LASIK, then the LASIK Vision Institute has officially taken away everything standing in your way.
Isn't LASIK expensive?
Not at the LASIK Vision Institute. We're offering dramatically low prices and an absolutely free consultation. See for free if LASIK is right for you by texting TOP to 350350.
But I'm really busy.
A text only takes seconds. The LASIK procedure typically only takes 15 minutes, and most patients can get back to work the following day. The LASIK Vision Institute uses the latest FDA-approved LASIK technology that helps the majority of patients achieve 20/20 vision. Dr. Greenberg has performed 75,000 LASIK surgeries and is one of the most experienced LASIK surgeons in Chicago. And we're offering 20% off our already low-cost services.
What's that text again?
Text